Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Heavyweights Podcast. In one corner, standing at 6'3", 290 pounds of solid chicken wings, Dustin Urban. And this corner at 6'7", 280 pounds, the one, the only, Big Daddy Nik Klein.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of The Heavyweights. I'm your co-host, Nik Klein, and to my left here is Dustin Urban. We welcome you to join us back for our second ever podcast. If you listened last week, again, I apologize because it was not good. We're going to start off this episode just diving right into the Senior Bowl on Saturday down in Mobile, Alabama. The North beat the South 34-17. My couple quick thoughts on that, I know most people don't watch that game, is just the offensive tackles in that game just looked completely lost. If any position group to me had their entire draft stock hurt more, it was that position. Quick notes, Justin Herbert looked okay at times. A lot of people are saying that he looked good. I know he did win MVP for the South team, but he still struggled at times with me with his quick reads. The pass rushers, though, were probably the biggest group that played well that entire game. It was up and down, some sloppy play, but overall it wasn't a terrible game to watch. I'm not sure exactly what you thought, though.
My biggest takeaway from it was the pass rush for the North really controlled the football game. And then UCLA's Josh Kelly, he had 105 yards on 15 carries. He really controlled the clock and had some nice runs there for the North, and few interceptions by the North from Malik Harrison from Ohio State and Troy Pride Jr. from Notre Dame. Another guy that really made some splash plays was Josh Uche from Michigan. He had a really good week of practice, and then he built on that in the Senior Bowl. And
I tend to like the practices more for the Senior Bowl week. The game can show a little more, but the practices, if you get on Twitter and you follow some of these other analysts, they tend to dive more into these one-on-ones. Honestly, I'm just glad this game's over. It's okay. I'm more ready to get into pro days, the combine, the interviews, more of those steps, because we know what their play looks like now. We've seen everybody that's going to enter the draft, what's going to come of it. I'm just more excited to get into the combine, and like I said, get over the testing done, and you're going to start seeing some risers and fallers, obviously, from this, but it's just begun. One of my favorite times of the year is the 3 months leading up to the NFL draft. It always has been. It's just great to be a part of. Honestly, being able to go to the combine as a member of the media a few years ago, just in awestruck of the whole process, how the NFL puts it together. But that's not what this week's about. It's more or less about the Super Bowl. We know that. But there was one other game on Sunday.
yeah, we had the Pro Bowl. It was a good game if you want to look at the score, but again, the Pro Bowl, it's just, I think it needs to go away. I think it's time.
I think that's a goddamn understatement.
I think it's time to finally put that thing in the grave.
I think I've watched less and less each year since I've been growing up, and
I think the last real highlight of the Pro Bowl was when Sean Taylor was alive and he laid out the punter. I don't even
Brian
remember.
Moorman from the Bills was talking about this past weekend, just laid him out on that fake punt. That
Right.
would have been 2007, I believe.
It's the greatest play in Pro Bowl history.
Yeah. I know, and I guess I haven't been watching the match the last couple of years. I tuned in for one series and tuned it off. I forgot about they don't even tackle anymore. It's a glorified flag football game that no one could care less about. The only time the players care is when the winning team gets like $60,000 to cover their family's expenses.
Yeah, and you're not going to Hawaii anymore. So the whole incentive to playing the game was take your family to Hawaii, have a nice vacation, and then hopefully get some extra cash to maybe stay there an extra few days and have a good time.
Well, I think it's a complete joke, too, just from the simple fact that they not only took it away from Hawaii, they started off with, when they brought it to Miami years ago, they started putting it for the goddamn Super Bowl for some reason. So now you've got these players that, nothing against like Jack Doyle, who had only 4 touchdowns this year and I think only 400 and some yards receiving.
Right.
But he was the 4th or 5th option for the AFC, had no right to be in there. He's a great blocker, a great player, but then you just got all these players that are taking time off for injuries or they're playing in the Super Bowl. So now it's instead of your normal, I don't even know how many standard, but there's an extra 20 to 30 guys. It seems like every year.
There was 10 guys for the Chiefs alone. So that's 10 players. I mean, and all of them might not have came. They might have got banged up in the Super Bowl or just not wanted to play in the game. And that always happened all through the years. Somebody was always sitting out. But when it was after the Super Bowl, a lot of the Super Bowl players used that as to launch their vacations in the offseason and didn't mind going down there for a week.
Well, and on top of that, I missed the games they used to play. Like, I remember growing up watching Peyton or they did the throwing contest. I remember the
skills challenges.
I remember Larry Allen's big ass bench pressing 225, and it was how many reps you could get on 225. And watching him, as a 13-year-old trying to play football, I'm going to get to his level and watch him bench press. I think it was 225 42 times. All right, that's a man. That's never going to happen to me. But it's lost its lackluster. They've got to do something else. I mean, the NBA All-Star Game's almost the same way. The MLB game's at least a little more competitive. It's hit and miss.
At least they have something to play for, and they get the winner gets home field in the World Series, but there's nothing you could do.
You can't relate that to the NFL. That's best
it's a
of
neutral
series.
field.
Yeah, and I get there's in the middle of season NBA doesn't want their players hurt either, but Goodell's got to do something. It's absolute trash, and the ratings I know have been going down for years. There's so many more other things to do on that Sunday completely.
If you didn't watch it, the AFC won 38-33. Lamar Jackson was your offensive MVP. He's probably going to be the MVP of the regular season. I don't think anybody could argue that.
But didn't he throw an interception in the first? I don't know. Sorry, it's just garbage.
Yeah,
Michael Thomas looked good for the one series I was in. He had a ridiculous catch over Tre'Davious White for Buffalo.
And then Calais Campbell was the defensive MVP. Like I said, I think they need to do away with this game, and they could just, like the All-Pro selections, they could just make it a list, and you still get your bonus pays or whatever, but you could just do.
No, the Pro Bowl is a game. I mean, you have your All MLB, your All NBA, and shit. You still need the Pro Bowl. They just got to do something different because having the All Pro list and just doing a Pro Bowl list, you're just going to have two of the same lists that are just going to contradict each other. It's going to be more freaking arguing, and there's no game that's going to come about it. But I could go on about this for 2 hours because it really gets old. But also earlier today, the Texans finally announced who their next GM was going to be. And I was waiting for them to actually interview people on this, but they announced Bill O'Brien was also going to be their GM. They pulled a Jets move and let Adam Gase and other teams have done. Obviously Bill Belichick's a great coach and GM, but that works. He's not Bill Belichick. Cam McNair, the owner of the Texans, had this to say today. Preparations are underway for the 2020 season, and I thought it was important to update titles, roles, and responsibilities for Bill O'Brien and Jack Easterby so they more reflect the way we have been operating the past 8 months. Well, no crap, but you've also traded away 3 first-round picks, I believe. Now, you don't have a first-round pick this year. I don't even think you have a second-round pick. O'Brien's done what? He's gotten to the playoffs 3 out of the last 4 years. 1 playoff win, I think. I could be wrong on that. But they've just looked lost at times. And once they get to those elite teams, they crumble. And I know that Bill O'Brien, this move is going to allow him to bring Romeo Crennel back, who that defense was better a couple years ago, but they looked lost at times. The offensive line is still shaky. Their patchwork this year was a trade for Laramie Tunsil, who looks good, but he's still not going to solve all your problems. So I guess what I'm coming at is, why not bring in someone else to help Bill O'Brien if you want to stick with him? Because to me, this should be a 1 year. If they are not one of the top 2 seeds next year going in to the playoffs and they don't at least advance the AFC Championship game and look competitive, you got to let him go. There's no way around it.
They're not even losing to the elite teams. I mean, they lost to the Colts last year, and I'm not saying the Colts were terrible by any means, but they weren't one of the top 5 teams in the playoffs last year. So
I mean, I think they were one of the top 4 teams in the AFC. I mean,
I didn't.
Texans struggled down the stretch, and the Colts had that run to end the year, and luck was still there, so that makes all the difference in the world. But they can't win the big games for some reason, and that's not on Deshaun Watson. He's looked great at times, but you have all these elite players: DeAndre Hopkins, J.J. Watt. You let Clowney go, that's fine. Deshaun Watson. You have the core there, but there is no depth on that roster, and it shows when you run into a team that has been banged up. Every team's banged up after 17 weeks in the season, and it's not close. It falls apart. Yeah, they had that great start against the Chiefs, but they let them come back, and then they didn't just let them come back. The Chiefs kicked down that door and beat the living shit out of them.
as Happy Gilmore would say, you blew it. So, I mean, or no, that was Billy Madison, but
close
messed
enough.
that one up. But moving on to the Super Bowl, it's going to be a really good game this Sunday, we're hoping. I don't know about you, Nick, but I really like the run game for the 49ers and the way they get after the quarterback. Those are my two big things that I take away from the 49ers. The Chiefs, they got to keep doing what they've been doing. Big plays down the field and try to slow down San Francisco's run game. Their defense has been very good in the playoffs and for the better half of the end of the season. So, I don't know. I feel like if the Chiefs can keep Mahomes clean and just find some semblance of a running game, I feel like that would be their best way to victory. I'm not saying that they haven't ran the ball this season, but Mahomes is their leading rusher in the playoffs, and I don't think that's going to get it done against San Francisco.
I think that can be contributed, though, to certain situations, though. They were down quick against both of their games. You have to throw the ball. The Texans were a terrible passing defense this year, one of the worst in the league, one of the worst statistically of all time, but their rush defense was top 10 all year. They took away one aspect, and they said, if Kansas City's going to beat us on offense, it's going to be Mahomes, which you don't want that to happen, but that's what the same thing with the Titans. They just couldn't slow down Mahomes or any other aspects after they got to him. I'm not sure. The keys for each team, I mean, it seems pretty clear-cut and simple with this. The Chiefs, you want them to be able to spread the ball out, use your speed on the outsides, get Mahomes moving around in that pocket, and fluster that speed of that San Francisco defense, who has been great this year. But their key all year has been that cover three straight back. You're going to put Richard Sherman on the left side, the other corner on the other, and you're going to let your defensive line get the pressures. I mean, the San Francisco 49ers were second in pressures this year with 172 on the season. They only turned that into 48 sacks, which was sixth in the league, but it was still consistently you're manipulating that quarterback to make the bad throws. The problem is Mahomes is one of the best in the league at making those type of throws, and he rarely makes poor decisions. It's a hit and miss. Like, you give away the strengths of each of these teams. I thought on paper, until I dove into some stuff this week, that they were just, the 49ers are just running the ball, great defense. They've had some high-scoring games this year. We all know that. We watched that New Orleans game, but they're closer than what we think. I do think that they do need to run the ball. They've averaged over 200 yards rushing a game in these playoffs. They were one of the top 3 rushing offenses in the league this year. But another key is that passing defense for the 49ers. They've only given up 23 touchdowns this year, but to 16 interceptions, which is one of the best. Outside of New England, that was the best regular season touchdown interception ratio for a secondary. But on the other side, Kansas City's 21-16 also. So it's not like Kansas City wasn't getting takeaways either. The Kansas City defense was a lot better. You look at it on paper, their first 8 weeks, they were just getting blown out. Not blown out, not them personally, but the defense would just, it reminds me of
high-scoring football games.
And it reminds me a lot of the old Colts back in when Peyton was coming in, and like you're talking from 02 to 05. Yeah, they can score 45 points, but that defense is probably going to give up 45. So it's hit and miss.
Even when the Colts had Bob Sanders, I mean, they still weren't this lockdown defense. They had their run that year in the playoffs, but other than that, they were one of the worst defenses.
They needed a safety at the end of that year because the fact that Sanders was able to come down and play in the box was perfect for them because Gary Brackett was underrated in my opinion. But you also had 2 of the greatest pass rushers of all time. So, I mean, if you got a lead, the Colts got a lead, if Manning got them a lead, that defense was hard to stop because you have the all-time strip sack artist and then Dwight Freeney, who's going into the Hall of Fame in a couple years.
And then, but back to the Chiefs and 49ers, I feel like Chris Jones and Frank Clark for the Chiefs, they're really going to be the biggest difference makers for the Chiefs on defense. I mean, everybody knows the Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu. He's going to make his plays. But up front, if they can disrupt the running game with the defensive line, I feel like it's going to be a long day for the 49ers if the Chiefs defense can get after them a little bit. But the 49ers just got to do more of the same, I feel like, and they can easily stop this Chiefs offense, or not stop them, but slow them down.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a couple factors in that. I mean, everybody's going to talk all week. Can the 49ers get to Mahomes and bring him down? That's Chiefs' offensive line only allowed 4.2% of their pass plays to be sacked. That was fourth in the league. San Francisco, on the other hand, which Kansas City does have some good pass rushers. We know they traded for Frank Clark, and they've got Chris Jones. They were 18th in the league, giving up 7% of their passing plays. Jimmy G was going to the ground. So, I mean, that's something to look at. But then again, you want to talk about if they're running the ball and controlling the clock, the 49ers, can they convert in the red zone? They were 5th in the league this year at 45% touchdown rate. Kansas City, though, was number 1 at 47.6. So that's flipping it on the schedule, because then I went back and looked at the defense. San Francisco's defense was third in the NFL in the red zone of not allowing any points at 33%, or not allowing a touchdown. Kansas City, though, was 11th at 37%. So it's not that much of a statistical draw in some of these aspects. That was actually kind of surprising. It could go either way. I mean, everything I look at, I think, the San Francisco's going to dominate in this area. Kansas City's not far behind.
Chiefs are closer than you would like to believe.
And a lot of it earlier this year, you could run all over Kansas City. I mean, it wasn't even close. Like, you knew the Colts beat them straightly because they just fed the ball on the ground. They kept the ball out of Mahomes' hands. So that's going to be your number one thing. But with the speed of this offense for Kansas City, everybody can focus on Tyreek Hill. But you got McCole Hardman and Sammy Watkins coming back in. You got Travis Kelce, and they're all going to be healthy. You take away one, you're just asking for the same play over and over, because what Andy Reid does, what he's great at, is what I went back and watched that AFC Championship. He'll run the same play 3 times, but he'll take Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins, and Travis Kelce, and they'll all run. Maybe Hill will run a streak, Kelce will run an out route, and then Watkins will run just a quick stream, like a fade in. And then they'll run the exact same formation play the next time, but the receivers switch up their routes. And he just manipulates everything. So are they going to be able to pick up on it? I'm not sure if this gets into a shootout, Jimmy G can keep them in it, though.
Yeah, I feel like he's shown in the few shootouts they've been in this year that he can.
That's a lie.
But no, I mean,
did you watch that first Seattle game when it went to overtime? He just looked dead and didn't want any part of that game. When it went to overtime, I knew Jimmy G wasn't going to be able to do anything. He looked lost.
Yeah, but then you have the game against the Saints, and I mean, he made the plays down the stretch to keep them in the game and win the game. I mean, I'm not saying he was their sole factor in winning the game, but he's shown a little bit that he can make. He hasn't shown in the playoffs at all.
He hasn't shown even to win the division. It's been, can my rest of my team do enough for me? Because I don't want to make those mistakes. I get you don't want to make those mistakes, but you're not even trying anything.
At some point, you got to put the ball in the air.
I mean, look at the Colts. Jacoby Brissett was trash this year because he's like, I don't want to turn the ball over. Well, then you have to do something on offense. It's just unreal. Maybe I'm wrong, and he could prove me wrong, and that would be his first, elite game in a big-time situation. But right now, he's nothing more than Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
That's all you got? It's just, there's so many factors in, but I know San Francisco will probably be able to run the ball okay, but the Kansas City's only giving up 81 yards on the ground in the playoffs this year, and they've gone against Derrick Henry. And it's not like Carlos Hyde is a bad matchup either for the Texans. The Texans have a good running game when they want to.
I feel like the 49ers run game is a lot. I mean, you know this as well as anybody. But
they do the stretch zone, and they do it well.
I mean, the 49ers, though, they run a lot differently than the Titans or the Texans.
I mean, every concept is different.
I know, but they run a lot of jet sweeps. They run, and out of that, they run a lot of different. They don't just pound it up the middle like Tennessee did with Henry.
But then on that aspect, then if you want to include the jet sweeps, they've got Deebo Samuel, they've got everybody to run with. But also, I haven't looked yet. Tevin Coleman, that is a big factor. Mostert's not going to have that type of game again.
No, and then is Coleman going to play is a big thing. I don't think he's going to play. I wouldn't foresee him playing. They got Matt Breida, though. He's not terrible.
No, he's fine in situations, too. He's more a bruiser type, and I get they want to do that because you want to take away the ball as much as you can from that prolific offense. I mean, they had the third least amount of drives this year in the NFL. They led the league in points per drive once you break it down, too. It's unreal just how effective they are on offense. Everybody's like, well, they didn't get that many chances because they throw the ball chunk play after chunk play. It's not just chunk plays. It's Andy Reid's play calling. It's Mahomes' decision making to be able to manipulate every defense they played against at some point, even when the Colts game when they were broke down. It's just all there's waiting for that one play that's gonna happen at some point. Will the 49ers be able to react to that, or will they let the Chiefs just start going? Because we've seen in these playoffs, we've seen in the regular season, once it starts tumbling like a snowball, it turns into an avalanche with their scoring. I mean, over 42 in the playoffs alone is a little ridiculous.
To me, it's a toss-up either way. I mean, I understand what you're going at, but I just feel like 49ers have the best defense in the playoffs to me, and the Chiefs have the best passing game and the most prolific offense in the playoffs. I know people would say the Ravens, but they got shown up very fast without having Mark Ingram. So I think everybody needs to pump the brakes on Lamar Jackson and crowning him the best. I'm not saying you said that, but a lot of people are saying.
No, and when I was talking about earlier with that, but I want to go back to talking about the red zone offense. I flipped those numbers around. Those were completely wrong. That was actually third down conversion rate. San Francisco's red zone defense, they gave up 60% of their possessions are touchdowns. That's 23rd in the league. KC, bend don't break all year. Bend don't break. We've seen that over the years with these high prolific offenses. They sometimes get with defenses that because they've invested so much in the offense. But 9th in the league at only 50% of touchdown conversion. San Francisco is 21st in the league on offense in red zone efficiency, only scoring 53% of the time. Kansas City, though, surprisingly, is only 20th at 54%. So, I mean, that's also with the field getting short, and we know that, and they like to spread the ball around. I think that comes from their trouble in rushing the ball this year. LaShawn McCoy is obviously not the player he was even 3 or 4 years ago, and Damian Williams has been banged up all in and out of all year. It's just everything.
Is McCoy going to play?
Yeah, and McCoy also said earlier at the media days last night that he will retire.
Eagle.
Yeah. Which I get. But, I mean, just every stat I keep looking at and trying to see these coverages, anything that they do, it seems like Kansas City will be able to adjust at some point, whatever San Francisco throws at them. I could be wrong, but, God, I'd love for Andy Reid to get a Super Bowl, and this KC team seems destined for a high-scoring, fast-paced. If it gets anything like that, obviously they're going to win. But even if it slows down, Kansas City can still figure out what to do slowly. They might not score for the first couple possessions, but at some point they're going to have a big play.
They've shown that they don't need to score in the first couple possessions. They can score at any time from anywhere.
I guarantee you, if they get down 24-0,
they're not going to win.
They're not going to win.
I'm not saying
if they jump out to that 17-0 lead or anything to what the Titans and Texans were able to do, this game is over.
Right. The way they run the football.
Yeah, and if they jump into those leads, it's because they were able to run the football.
Well, and hopefully Shanahan's learned from his days in Atlanta where he didn't understand the play clock.
I think everybody in America outside of New England wanted him to not blow that, and we hope that he's learned from it.
I feel like he could have kneed the ball the rest of the game when they were up 28-3, and they could have figured out.
I don't know why they weren't running the ball more and they started throwing it back late in that fourth quarter. And there was a lot of factors that went into that game, and I really don't want to talk about that.
Right.
Instead, we're going to start off with a new segment we're going to start doing every week, too. We're going to send out questions through Facebook and our YouTube page. We're going to start doing questions of the week. So the first question of the week, I'll let Urban start off with answering this. Does the Chiefs defense have one more big game in them?
I think they do. I mean, there's not a lot other than like you said, the running game is the biggest problem that they're going to face. Jimmy G's going to have to prove that he can win the game, and I don't know.
I wouldn't see. I don't like the phrasing, but honestly, the biggest thing here is since week 11. The Chiefs have been number 1 in points per game allowed on defense. Obviously, you take out the 2 playoff games. I'm just talking regular season. That defense has slowly turned around. You got to think they had 9 new starters on that defense and switched with Spagnuolo to a 4-3. It's worked. It takes time with these personnels. They brought in almost an entire new secondary. They've switched a lot of people around. I mean, we've seen what Tyrann Mathieu can do. We've seen Frank Clark's been a booster at times. Chris Jones has been great from the interior. It's just... I wouldn't word it like that, but yes, I do think they have one more game in them, obviously. But I think this defense is a lot better than what people are giving it credit for. I'm not saying it's elite by any means, but it's sufficient enough to win this game. The second question comes to us. It says, is the 49ers defense good enough to slow down the Chiefs? Yes. I mean, flat out, we've seen them do this time and time again. They just completely shut down the Packers offense, which was a run-heavy offense all year that was led. But I really wanted to see them go against New Orleans in that second round.
I think everybody wanted to see them play New Orleans.
Because Minnesota didn't have a bad running game, or they had a great running game this year. I mean, but their offense wasn't terrible. Kirk Cousins had a great year. He deserved to be in the Pro Bowl. I mean, they had two great receivers. Thielen was still coming back from injury. But, yes, they can slow him down. Now, can they do it consistently over 4 quarters? I don't think so. But I think they can limit them to 17 to 20 points in a perfect scheme, a perfect way to slow them down. I'm just not sure it really happens.
They're definitely good enough to do it, but like we've harped on many times, the Chiefs live and die by big plays. They can drive the ball down the field with the best of them, but the way they make the big plays, I don't see the 49ers just shutting them down. Question number 3, can the Chiefs come back if they fall behind quickly again?
No, right?
I mean, it just depends on how much are they down by. I think the number really...
I think this question's... It's clearly...
It's a loaded question.
It's not a loaded question. No, don't be a fucking idiot. It's not a loaded question. It's literally they're trying to say if they get down by 14 to 2 to 3 scores again, quick.
I mean, if it's 14, yes, they can come back. I fully believe in what I've seen from their offense that they could come back.
You would have asked me 3 years ago, the largest comeback I think in Super Bowl history was only 10 points, still at 28-3 shit.
Right.
I mean, it's not... It's plausible, but I think with this type of defense, they always say defense wins championships. I know San Francisco's got a good one. I still think I'm leaning towards Kansas City, but I don't think they have enough time to come back because of the way the 49ers will be able to control the ball.
I agree with that, but I'm just saying, can they? Yes, they definitely can.
Okay. I mean, the next question goes into their defense, too. It says, can Richard Sherman match up one-on-one with Tyreek Hill? I don't think anyone can, but it's the schemes you work. Now, Sherman shadowed Devontae Adams last week. That was a mistake. Luckily, Green Bay had no other targets, receivers. Jimmy Graham's not what he used to be. Sherman's probably going to line up on the left side this entire time. They're going to run that cover 3. So what the cover 3 is meant to do is you have help over the top and you're going to jam that receiver at the line. You are praying that your defensive line, which is elite, can get to Mahomes and fluster him quick enough. I don't think that he can cover him one-on-one. I don't think they're going to make him do it primarily just on him because he's going to have to line up against Sammy Watkins, Hardman, Kelsey even at times goes out wide, and Tyreek Hill.
The thing with Sherman is he doesn't travel. He stays on that left side of the field.
Outside of last week, but yeah, I mean, he's always been that way.
He usually doesn't travel, and they don't play man-to-man defense. Very rarely they play.
And cover 3 is a version of man-to-man, but you have the safeties dropping deep.
But they don't play straight up man-to-man, cover 2. They don't play that.
If they do this cover 3 and continue it, what is going to open up if Mahomes can get time is those little streak and post in routes. They get behind him and they can just dump it in because those safeties aren't going to be able to come up in time.
In short, I don't think he can cover him one-on-one.
I mean, I don't either. So the next question, though, I mean, can the Chiefs defense contain the rushing attack from the 49ers? I think they can, but I'll let you start there.
I don't think they can. I mean, last week they shown they can, or last game they showed they could stop the run against the Titans, but I just think the 49ers are a different animal.
I mean, they are a different animal. So here's the thing. The first 10 weeks of the season, they were giving up 142 rushing yards per game, over 5 yards per carry, and 9 touchdowns. I told you it took a while for the defense to get together, right? That switched from when they haven't lost since week 11, after they got blown out by the Titans, give up over 200 rushing yards. They've only allowed 129 yards per game, only 4 yards per carry, and only 2 touchdowns. That's improvement, and that's, you talked about it earlier.
That's one of the biggest.
The Outsiders, they had that run the Colts defense did. That's what brought back. Tyrann Mathieu taking it to another level late in the season. They've gotten guys healthier. That defense can slow them down. They've got speed as well, which if you're running that spread and those zone runs, can you get them and contain them and keep them inside? San Francisco's interior offensive line is not good.
Yeah,
they've struggled all year. They've got 2 really good tackles, especially McGlinchey's getting better. It's only his second year out of Notre Dame, but yes, I think completely they can. I'm not saying they're going to hold them to like 60, 70 yards and no touchdowns. And
if they do, they win by a landslide.
Yeah,
the Chiefs.
Well, and that's because it turns into a shootout and they have to throw the ball constantly and they don't run the ball. But I think they can limit them to something modest because they're averaging over 200 yards rushing a game this postseason. They've averaged, I think, over 150 per game this year. They were one of the top 5 rushing teams in the league. I think, actually, they were second, 800 yards behind Baltimore, but Baltimore has the all-time record. They beat that team from the 30s. So, yes, I think they can. But if that happens, that's kind of our next question. Can Chimpy Cheek keep this offensive line if their run game is completely shut down?
I think he has the capabilities to do it, but I don't think he will. I
mean, you said all podcast, now you're switching your mind. You said we've seen him be able to make those plays. I call you out on now. You change your mind?
I've seen him in the fucking...
Okay, I see how it is.
I've seen him in the Saints game do it, but you reminded me of some other games. I'm not going to lie. He didn't play the biggest in some of the biggest games of the season.
Garoppolo is number 1 in the league this year on completion percentage, yards per completion, and passer rating on play action plays. He's looked his best in that. So in theory, for him to look his best, it's got to have a run game.
Yeah,
this question is barring the running game was shut down.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a chance. I could be wrong. I've been wrong a lot. I mean, no one's perfect, but I just don't see that happening. So much has to go right for him. I mean, I know they've got Sanders, they've got Deebo Samuel, they got George Kittle, who we haven't talked about, I think, all podcast, who is one of the top. I think it's him and Kelsey. You have the 2 best tight ends in the game right now.
There's no question.
Okay. I mean, he can do it all, but can they get him the ball enough? Because I honestly can see Kansas City shadowing Matthew quite a bit on Kittle. And then you can switch some other stuff around, but I'm not quite sure. I just don't think he can do enough if that run game gets shut down.
On to question number 7. Will the 49ers be able to actually get to Mahomes?
Yeah, I think they can get to Mahomes. I think that getting him to the ground is a completely different story. I think they can have 2 or 3 sacks in this game. Obviously, you have Nick Bosa, you've gotten Solomon Thomas, Eric Armstead, D Ford, whose redemption story, that question is going to be asked at some point because he's the sole reason, well, not the sole reason, but he was the scapegoat last year for the Chiefs.
Can he not jump off sides?
Yeah. He doesn't jump off sides, they win that game. But he's had a great year, too. I mean, not as great as he did in 2018.
He was banged up a little bit this year.
Well, and he also was it was a contract year last year, and then, he had his career year, and that's when players always get paid. So at least Kansas City got something out of him. But I think they can get to him, but I don't think it's going to be what you see. They're going to try to contain him because most teams will want you to fluster out and get the quarterback out of the pocket. What they need to be able to do is bring Bosa and whoever else they want to use, D Ford or anybody else on those sides, and collapse those pockets. And you probably want to keep a guy, another spy guy, so Mahomes doesn't start running around because that's where he's been dangerous all postseason and all year.
That's their real key to the game. Can they get him on the ground? And if they do, they will have a very good chance of winning this football game.
Okay, I get that. I mean, we'll just go to the last question of the week, which might be my favorite. Will I run out of beer before this game is over? I don't know who posted this, but I probably won't. Then again, last year I had a keg over at my house with a few people over, and we ended up finishing that game because last year was one of the most boring Super Bowls I've ever watched. And then I was 9 hours late for work the next day. Same might be said for you. I mean, you drink just as much as me.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm somewhere with a keg, we're not going to probably run out. But if it's a couple cases of beer, there's a over/under 40 beers. I would set the under. I'm probably going to be tame tomorrow or on Sunday.
I mean, we both need to be, but I'm hoping this game doesn't. Last year, it just led me to drink.
I took Monday off because I'm a degenerate.
I can't. That doesn't surprise me with you. All right, then we're gonna go to one of the last segments. Then again, your predictions for the game.
I'm gonna go with the 49ers. I've been on their bandwagon for a while now, and I think they're gonna neutralize Mahomes and slow him down at least, not stop him. Nobody's gonna stop him, and I think the score will be 34-31, 49ers.
Yeah, I'm going the complete opposite way. Like I said, I was looking up all these just intricate parts. I think the Kansas City defense is clicking at the right time. They've been better. Kansas City's offense, do I think they're going to score 43? No. But I think even if this game is in the low to mid-20s, it's Kansas City's game. So I'm going to take Kansas City 27-17, and it will look more dominant than what that score is going to show. I just think that this is Kansas City's year. There's nothing against San Francisco. They've had a great year. I just don't think their offense has enough weapons to get through this hump. Like, you still need some sort of offense because it's not going to be last year's game when you had one of the better offenses of the season come in and just get shut down by the Patriots. Okay? So That's our predictions. I'm going to be right. Urban's going to be wrong. There's no question about that. Now we're getting into our last thing that we're going to do every week. We did this last week. This is called the 6-Pack Questions of the Week. We're doing it on the Super Bowl history.
This is the 6-Pack of the Week.
All right, with the first question I got for you. Who was the Super Bowl MVP for the Buccaneers in Super Bowl 37?
Dexter Jackson.
Yeah, right off the bat. All right, second one. What quarterback holds the longest pass completion in Super Bowl history?
It was to Nassim Muhammad. It was Carolina Panthers. Oh, this is going to make me mad. He ended up playing for the Browns. Jake Delhomme, thank you. I had to talk myself through it. I knew it right off the bat. I could tell you who it was.
Yeah, I mean, you had it. Who has the most rushing touchdowns in a single game in Super Bowl history?
It is 3. Correct?
Yeah.
It's not John Riggins. It's not a Redskins player. I can't think of his name. I literally looked this up the other week.
Do you know the team?
The Redskins, I believe it would.
No, it's Terrell Davis.
Oh, is it Terrell Davis? Is you sure he's not tied with a few people then at 3 touchdowns?
Nope.
Okay.
It's Terrell Davis.
Right.
In all the Super Bowls they've played, who has the most tackles in Super Bowl history? He played in 4 Super Bowls, so
Was it me
all
and Joe?
together.
Was it Joe Green?
No, it was Rodney Harrison.
Oh, okay. I mean, that makes sense. He also had one of those tackles was one of the greatest catches in Super Bowl history.
Yeah,
David Tyree.
everybody loves that one, especially non-Patriots fans.
Yeah.
But who has the longest rush in Super Bowl history?
That would have to be. It's not Bo Jackson. It's the other running back. It's Marcus Allen would have been the other one. I'd have to go with Marcus Allen. I think that's him.
It's Willie Parker, a 75-yarder.
Pittsburgh.
Second was Marcus Allen. And then my last one for the week. In Super Bowl 12, 2 teammates were named Super Bowl co-MVPs. What team did they play for?
Co-MVPs in Super Bowl 12.
The only 2 of all time, by the way.
I could that. Oh, so 12 would have been. I'm gonna go with Dallas.
Hit it right on the head.
All right. Well,
All right, I got you on 2 of them.
Well, that's not too bad. I should have gotten Willie Parker. I mean, I remember seeing that the other day on TV. They were showing highlights of the Steelers for some reason, and I kept watching. All right, well, thanks for joining us for another episode of the Heavyweights. We hope to see you back here next week when we recap the Super Bowl, and we'll start getting into the offseason fun. Have a good night.
Coming to you from parts unknown, 2 men that decided that Brokeback wasn't gay enough, so they came up with a podcast, The Heavyweights. Watch out, Stoolbar! Dustin Urban and Nik coming for you. Ding ding!